Hello, good morning, everybody. We're here to talk about career as a service. Why are you here? I'm going to ask you that question. I'm going to tell you why I'm here, in case you're wondering why am I standing up here, besides Josh's lovely introduction. So yeah, I knew Josh back whenever he carried a pager to lunch, and I'd like to think I made a difference in his career because we all made fun of him because he was running ops at Cisco, and he had to carry the pager, and it kept going off during lunch, and he's like, this has got to change. I can't do this. I want to eat lunch. So why am I here? I have had the good fortune of being on a podcast called the Geek Whisperers, where I got to interview hundreds and hundreds of people in the industry who were interested either in changing their careers or had made a change in their careers or were looking to do something new, and they told us their stories. So I'm here to share some of what we learned and listening to them. I'm not in HR. I do hire people, so there is that, and I don't necessarily have a job for everybody, so I'm not here to pitch you for anything. I'm just talking about how you manage your own career. I've also transitioned my own career several times where I had that moment of like, yep, it's time to do something new. And we'll talk through a little bit about how that happens. Also, I'm a cat meme aficionado. Thankfully, I did not put up the Google search return on the cat memes that I found because that would be a little bit scandalous, but I will be happy to share some of the ones that didn't make the cut. I feel like the lingua franca of the internet is in fact cats. We all know it runs on cats. These actually happen to be my two cats. I also live with a network engineer, so you can only imagine how often we meme our own cats. When the network goes down, we just have to do it in real life by showing our phones to each other. All right, so career as a service. How many people, and maybe if your boss or somebody in your management chain is here, how many people are just so thrilled with their job every day, they're like, nope, nope, don't want to learn anything new? Yeah. We've all probably had to change in our career, or we want to try something new. Maybe you're looking for a new role, maybe you're looking for a new spot within what you do. Let's put the gorilla in the room out there. So often I've heard in my years in technology, XYZ is happening, like blah is doomed. I really enjoyed Josh's Google search returns on that. Like so many things are, the end is nigh, right? If you don't do XYZ, the end is nigh. I don't think that's true. However, I think there's a great opportunity that we all want that flexibility. We all want to be considered for the promotion, the raise, the change of responsibility, or you just, any reason you might want to have that flexibility. If we are in fact all doomed, you want to be the last one standing, right? You don't have to be the fastest, just you can't be the slowest runner. You have to be the second fastest. So how do we get there? Play in a sandbox. So set up an account somewhere doing something, and this can be any number of things. I was just at AWS reInvent last week, so there's a common way that people go out and try new things. That's kind of the ultimate sandbox in this day and age. If you haven't tried some skills that somebody said, oh, can we do this? Can we do this faster? If you feel that pressure, if you get those questions at work, find a place to play. True story, when I started my career, I thought I made fun of Twitter openly, which is pretty funny if you know me now. I am probably better known as Comms Ninja on Twitter than my own name because if you look up Amy Lewis, there's about 8 million of us. So by the time that I joined Twitter, that was not available. At Amy Lewis, long gone. So I became Comms Ninja because I thought it was funny, and I learned a valuable lesson called make sure that your little idea of a joke, you can live with it, because now I'm kind of stuck with it. Anyway, I had to suddenly move from being a back of the office person, believe it or not, I'm pretty introverted, to being a front of the office, go out and do stuff. I set up an account so I could play and figure out how to do this. And it is a methodology we heard over and over as Geek Whisperers, listening to people try things before they fully deployed, which probably rings in your ears as true. You don't necessarily go full deployment with something before it's been tested. So find a way to test some of these skills that pique your interest. Find a side project, find a weekend hobby. Practice the rusty skills. We've also heard tons of stories as people, as the technology changes so quickly, that you may have learned something in an old program, in your original degree, et cetera, but you haven't done it in a long time. Pick up that skill and work with it some more now. Programming language, a different programming language, something that you haven't touched in a while, dust it off. Try something new. And also learn a new one. So that could be a skill specific or it could be a certification. How many people here have a certification in something? So if you've got one, you know you can do it. Think about what would that look like in the new world? How can I get something new? And if you're not sure, go to LinkedIn and look around and see what other people are doing. See not just the job you have. That's a good place to start. What do other people look like who are doing what you do? And what do other people look like that are doing something that you think you want to do? Find a community. This is a great one to start with. It can be online. A lot of us I'm a work from home person. I need a virtual community because, again, it's me, the cats, the dog who thinks she's a cat, and the network engineer. So super chatty, because he's the super chatty type, right? So I need to find a community outside those four walls. So it can be any number of places. For me, Twitter's a platform of choice. It's a great place to listen kind of broadly. There are a million communities. V Brown Bag, I know, is one that Josh has been very involved with over the years as again, a self-training group. Whatever your skill set is, do a little bit of research and you'll find the right community. If that's not the right one for you, you don't feel like it's welcoming, you don't feel like you're learning, they're not in the same place in career you are, find another one. But don't give up on that. It is so important to have peers as you go through this process and this transformation that we're all seeing in the industry. It's great to have people with you. Good habits don't change. So lots of hand raisers in terms of certifications. So you already know how to do this. Make learning new skills a hobby. It doesn't have to be this odious thing. Again, so often we hear in this industry, if you don't, code or die was certainly one I heard 2 or 3 years ago. I'm sure you guys all heard that one a million times. But the new habits and the new things that you're going to learn, it doesn't have to be a task. It doesn't have to be the equivalent of Brussels sprouts at Thanksgiving. Make it a hobby. Make it something that's fun to do. Give yourself a project, like I said, that sandbox, and go toward whatever it is you want to learn. Now, this is a big one. The other thing that I saw as a make or break between people who felt a little stuck in their career and people who had more mobility and flexibility and were just happier, understand the business. So you can do anything. Clearly in this room, 10 plus years of experience, there's probably nothing you can't do, no matter how outrageous the request that comes, right? I'm sure you're like, are you kidding me? Can I do that? Dive and catch? Yeah, okay, I can. But should you? So the number one thing you can do to become an invaluable player is speak the language of business. I often joke I'm fluency in geek, but I also want to have fluency in general business, right? If you are in an industry or a vertical that you like, then know that business. Look at broad industry magazines, blogs, research. Know how that industry operates outside of your own four walls, right? Again, Twitter, LinkedIn, some of the classic social platforms are really important. Podcasts, look for other ways to get outside of that so that you can help answer the question, I can do this, but should we? Because becoming a trusted advisor is often the big distinction between someone who stays holding the pager forever and isn't considered for a promotion, being a team lead, a different responsibility, or being considered to be a business partner. So when you cross over and can speak both fluent geek and that language of business, you become infinitely more valuable. So don't forget that. Get into a DevOps state of mind. I rather like this one. If you are at a company that you think is moving more slowly than what you want to see your skill set progress, how can you be the change? And I think, and it sounds totally goofy, but my official title is Director of Influence Marketing. So I spend a whole lot of time getting in people's minds. See how well it worked for Josh. Yeah, he was just talking about various events we'd ever traveled to together, including in Barcelona, and he was naming the reasons that he probably didn't want to do that again. And unfortunately, I was present for all 3 of those stories. So maybe getting in people's minds is not something I should brag about. However, if you are at work and your company doesn't think the way you want them to think, how can you personally change your mind and start to add things like automation? Have you always done processes in the same way? Is there some level of this new way of thinking that you can add? Is it how your team meets? Is it how you communicate? Is it the platforms? Sully, who's coming up next, and I were just talking about that, where he's working now. Red Hat has, you said, infinite, they don't they don't force you down a particular path in terms of the chat platform, your operating system, endless things, like endless variety. So you may not have that level of flexibility where you work, but how can you have that flexibility in your mind and, again, change something culturally to bring in this DevOps way? Because then you are practicing what people think of as this new way of operating, this new way of business. So you then have the benefit of all the years of experience. And I don't like to call myself old. I prefer vintage, right, marketing. So you have the benefit of experience, but also this new way of thinking, because nobody can stop you, even if the company has very strict restrictions. You can be prepared to either change the company you're in or be preparing yourself for the next role you might want if you're really looking for something with more flexibility. All right, controversy time. Generalists fare better than specialists. And that does not mean I don't think you should have a specialization. Jack of all trades, master of none. However, in this new operating world, again, this is about a mindset shift. How can you think about various solutions to a problem? And as engineers, I certainly see this in the home, like infinite ways to solve the problems, right? Maintaining that flexibility, making sure that as you learn a new skill set, you don't become so aligned to one, you don't become religious in that. It will make you more valuable within your company. It will make you more valuable as you seek a different position if that's what you so choose. Because keeping your mind open to the various ways you could solve the problem and not going down a particular vendor route. I know, I'm going to be shot by my company for saying these things, but make sure you have that flexibility. I've often joked, I feel like, how many of you have been to New York City? Yeah? All right, I love Indian food, and there are those classic Christmas light Indian restaurants, right? I've often joked, I feel like sometimes careers in IT is similar to the Indian restaurant row in New York City, where it's probably all coming out of the same kitchen, and it just depends on which storefront you go into. So remember that, like there are infinite ways to solve problems, and maintaining that flexibility in your mind will make you a more valuable partner to the business. And just statistically, we see that those folks are more flexible in their career, more flexible within their organization. I like that cat too. All right, testing. Research the job titles that you want, your job, actually, job roles and titles on LinkedIn. So classic old-fashioned platform, but when is the last time you looked to see what other people like you did on LinkedIn? Right? You know things are going fine at work, you're reasonably happy, but are you up to date? Are you where the next group of people they'll hire? Are you part of a hiring process as they bring in new people? What sort of qualities do you look for in that person if you have the benefit of being on that hiring team? Are you that person? Yes, we have vintage, but do we have that next set of skills that that people can see as being flexible, engaging, and right for the next thing that we want to do? If you want a new role, that's the perfect place to go look. What's the delta between you and that skill set? What's going to make you a viable candidate for something you might be looking to in the future, or a slight shift, versus where you are now? Go on an interview. How many people have gone on an interview just because, as opposed to really, yeah. I think you should, if you've never considered that. And it is a little bit of energy, right? Sometimes it's just a phone screen, and that for me is a no-brainer. I always say I'll have any conversation, just because it does not mean I'm going to run and leave VMware immediately because somebody contacts me. I've had amazing conversations with recruiters that I then bring into my own practice because I do hire people. So I listen how they are talking to me and what they're looking for to think about what I want to bring into my own team. So it doesn't mean that, do every single one, but I encourage you, if you haven't interviewed in a lot of years because you're very content where you are, think about it as a dry run. It's the perfect dev test environment, right? Go and see, what do you stack up against in terms of market value? Are you as valuable as you think you are? Are you more valuable than you think you are? Are you getting questions that go, wow, I do need to brush up on this language or that skill set, or I'm really surprised they gave me this test? Go for it. Look around and see what those roles are, be it your current role. Would you be able to get your own job back without the institutional knowledge? Or would you have to bone up on a different set of skills to be a viable candidate? Because anytime you work at a job for a really long time, it's a great thing, right? Anybody who's changed jobs or had to bring on somebody who's a new hire, it's tough to get them up to speed, right? It's right from where the water cooler is to what tools do you use, what systems are you engaged with, how do you work together? That institutional knowledge is valuable and you want people to ramp up quickly, but going back to what I said about that flexibility, if you haven't ramped up quickly like that in a lot of years, think about how you can re-energize yourself, change your energy a little bit, change your way of thinking a little bit. Interviewing can be a great way to do that, to sort of test you against, do I know how to do this because I've done it for a long time or because I'm staying fresh? Share, share, share. Again, just following Thanksgiving. I feel like this cat is perfect. Once you have consumed, and I love Josh said this here today, once you've consumed a bunch of knowledge, how do you share it back with the community? Because teaching is a great way to learn and make sure that we've gotten the knowledge ourselves. It's also a great way to put yourself out there. You might not be looking right now, but maybe, again, somebody's going to come and say, wow, I saw what you put up on GitHub. I kind of want to talk to you. And maybe it's just a peer-to-peer mentoring. Maybe they actually want to tell you about a position that, again, pulls you further down your learning path and keeps you fresh in what you're doing today. So for everybody who's like, oh my gosh, Amy told me to go get a new job tomorrow. No. But staying fresh in your job can sometimes mean checking to see where the outside boundaries are. So sharing helps you do that. And various platforms. So GitHub, LinkedIn, VMware Code. Think about skills-based learning. Pluralsight has a lot of great courses. Coursera, again, online, comfort of your own home. Top bloggers. Who are you reading? Are you staying current on what's going on in the industry, on a particular topic or trend? And are you blogging? So I had this talk at reInvent, and it was interesting. A lot of people came back and said, legally, my legal department has to clear before I can say anything. Absolutely, that's important. And I would say, as you look for a job, wanted to add that, if you are on a career path, make sure that you ask questions about any kind of company you go into. If they have restrictive policies and you do have a blog or a podcast or something else that you're bringing with you, make sure that you've cleared that going into the company. That's something I always have to do going in to make sure that that is my intellectual property. I'm not going to say anything future-leaning, et cetera. But you want to stay out of hot water. But I still really believe in blogging as a platform. It's a great way to document what you know and a great way to share it with others. Podcasts. If you're not listening, how many people are podcast listeners? All right, let's see those numbers go up. I'm going to push this one as a platform, and here's why. If you are ever in a car, and here in the South, sometimes when I'm somewhere else, people are like, nope, nope. Yeah, I drove down I-40 this morning. That can take a long time. There were a lot of people going the other direction. I'm very unhappy today. In the car, besides, I was listening to the 80s this morning, I admit, but I also have this Intel and Security podcast that I'm really looking forward to listening to because it's an area I'm delving into a little more and also very cloud-based stuff. So I am a big Cloudcast fan. There's the Data Knots, the Geek Whisperers, a little indulgent there, I suppose. But I'm 1/3 of the Geek Whisperers, and we did talk a lot about career and career transition. So it's 140 episodes. We parked it for now. But it's a great way to listen to other people in the community talk about their story and see if there's any inspiration you can get. There's endless number of podcasts. You can literally learn anything there. And consider it yourself. Once you've become a listener, maybe you've got something that you want to say or share. Everybody likes to communicate differently. If you don't think of yourself as a blogger or a heavy coder that you don't want to push to GitHub or you don't want to write a blog, think about starting a podcast. It's just a way to document what you learn. And I seem to be having the same effect on you guys that I have on myself because secretly I'm a notorious insomniac. I haven't even had caffeine this morning because then you would get the hummingbird version of this. But I would listen to my own podcast because I had heard it once and it would put me to sleep. So I apologize if I'm having that effect on you. The coffee is right over there. All right, so the cat memes. It's not just me. As engineers, I know you like data and science. And therefore, I will prove that it's not just me with the cat obsession, although we all know the internet runs on cats. This is an incredible article I read in the Harvard Business Review, and I love that it's cat-based. The Business for Curiosity. Go out and find it. The article's online now. If we learned one thing as the Geek Whisperers and interviewing infinite people, the difference between people who had success and joy in their career and the people who felt stuck, it was curiosity. So curiosity, hopefully, or just the prospect of a free lunch and breakfast brought you here. Let that curiosity drive you forward in your career. Let that curiosity have you learn something new. It is never too late to learn something new. I I have 2 kids, probably like many of you. I have soccer players, and I watched and watched and watched, and I will reveal my age. At age 45, over the summer, I started playing soccer, and I just want you to know, because I've been obnoxious and telling everybody, I scored 5 goals 2 weeks ago. So anybody can take up something new. Thank you. Thank you. My poor mom, I'm like, I scored 5 goals. She's like, aren't you a little old to be calling your mom to tell her about your sports? No is the answer. So stay curious, right? Stay curious, and it will pull you forward. Any one of us can do anything new, and it keeps us going. So even if you have great joy within your career, think about, let that curiosity lead you to the next thing, okay? I believe in you. Get out there and catch that red dot. So if you've got cats, you'll appreciate this. If you don't, you'll think I'm crazy, and I'll explain it to you later. Who's got questions? Or I go in the crowd. Josh will tell you that. I go full Oprah. Oh, good.
Okay. So I was going to put this question up here, but I'll ask you first, and then I'll put it up there ceremoniously. Yes. So you mentioned you should practice interviewing, and I highly agree with this. What about practicing interviewing internally in your own company? Would you advise that? Noting that it's practice.
No, I absolutely, well, you can do that in a bunch of different ways, right? So yes, I think that it depends on your company culture. Obviously, if you're seen as a job hopper, I feel like that's a Dilbert cartoon, right? If you're seen as a hopper, then maybe not great, but you can do it in other ways. We didn't talk a lot about mentors, but at this time in career, it may feel like, oh, I should be mentoring people, not necessarily being mentored. But it's a great way, again, you can go and sort of secretly think of somebody as a mentor, have an interview-like conversation, be learning for them. Let's say Jane has got an open role in a group that you haven't worked with. You can go find out what Jane is looking for, right? And say, I want to see if I know anybody. So you can be a little undercover if you need to do that. If it's open, then go ahead and talk to somebody and say, what kind of skills are you looking for? What do you see as a successful candidate? Find out, how does that map to you? What kind of conversation are you able to have? But I think it's another way of practicing that skill set, because if you don't interview for a really long time, it's the pits, right? You just feel so overwhelmed when you go into it.
Kind of like software deploys.
Yeah.
Question. So you mentioned generalist versus specialist, right? This is like the kind of these eternal struggles, right?
Taste great, less filling.
Well, yeah. I mean, specialists. Let's be honest. You can command a higher price because you are the deep. So the deeper you go, the more you can command on a personal level. It's kind of your price. But then again, the generalists are better for the organization because they have the organizational knowledge. They understand. They're the integrators. They're the folks that make things run better. So how do you see people balancing those two needs? One's very kind of personal driven, but also, you're generalist, you're valuable to that company. It's just not portable because you're a generalist kind of in that company. So can you talk a little bit about sort of how people see balancing those two needs?
No, I totally agree. And the thing is, if your passion is as a specialist, that's not a bad thing. I think that would be maybe a little mindset shift to make sure that you don't lose some of your generalist knowledge. Because if you truly become religious about your specialty and it fundamentally alters the way you think and are able to solve problems, I think it could be a little career limiting if you need to move. The other sort of danger is, and forgive me if I step on toes here, but the other danger is you become the mainframe guy. There's always need for the mainframe, right? There's always one mainframe guy or gal. Right. But if that's right for you, that's right for you. But it will hamper your flexibility. It will lock you in a little bit. So I think, and I would counsel people the opposite direction. If you find yourself an extreme generalist, you probably want to get a couple things that you can go deep on so that you're not so interchangeable. Mm-hmm. And to your point, you can command a little bit higher a price. So that's kind of on you. If your day job requires that general way of thinking, then it's going to be your hobby to go a little bit on a specialty. But in terms of flexibility and portability and not getting locked into a particular role and being seen as only one way, I think that you've got to maintain something of that general tech background. Mm-hmm. Hello. Oh.
So a quick question around the interview process?
Yes. I know. Sorry, that one light is right in my eye, so I'm trying to look at you without going blind.
So in the interview process, would you say
That is such a great question, because if I had $1 for every time I've talked to somebody who said, I was at a job for a really long time. I got comfortable there. I loved it. I understood it. Even though I felt a little stagnant in my role, like I loved it. And then they move and it's really uncomfortable. So they love the work and the job and they kind of hate their coworkers and every day they get up and everything. And that's the kind of thing that scares people. And oftentimes I've seen those people go back to their original company. So don't let this horror story become your story. Ask those questions. It will seem weird and it may be a little uncomfortable, again, as an introvert, but observe things. Ask questions that may seem a little odd. Ask them about what is the culture? Do people really work 9 to 5 here? You can get at that in other ways, but think about how that job or that change fits in your life. Because no matter how awesome the day-to-day tasks are, if the work culture is so unbearable, you won't make it, or I hope you don't try to, for all of your sakes. I want you to be happy people, because I do think that's the other thing. Curious people are successful, and happy people are successful in their career. So finding something. So yes, ask a lot of questions. If you can go on site, go on site. If it's a remote, thing, because you're going to get a vibe. See who else you can ask for. Ask what a day in a life looks like for somebody who would have your role. Go ask that person. Ask if you can interview with that person. Talk to as many people at the company as possible. But absolutely, and right along with ask every question you can up front, even if it seems, again, a little bit odd or awkward and sort of very soft, right? All the engineering stuff, all the work will flow, but really do ask, and ask peer level and look for how they treat folks like up and down the stack, because at your stage in career, you're probably gonna be okay, but how does it look for, how would it have been for you 10 years ago, 5 years ago, right? How do they treat company within that? And also find out about the flexibility. Like, that's a really important one for me when I go in. That's just one of my things, is I want to know, like, what does this look like? What is the flexibility within the company? Can I move to, if it's terrible, is secretly what I'm asking, like, can I move within the company easily, or is that really locked in? And is there a ceiling, or, what does that look like? Really good question. Yeah, and the other thing we learned as Geek Whisperers, people who went for the price, because it's so tempting and they dangle, beware. If they back the money truck up, really ask questions. Because yes, we're all fabulous, but I have a story, I will not name names, but I was offered twice my salary and I turned it down. And like the day before I had to make the decision, I almost barfed. There's a real talk. And I could just, my body was telling me something. I'd asked, I knew, I did some company culture study, and I was really right. And 2 weeks later, they came out with a campaign that was pretty gender biased, and I would have been the person standing in front of it, and that's why they wanted to pay me twice as much, to put basically a girl in front of a sexist campaign, bluntly. So ask those questions, right? Ask those questions, because the money truck is beautiful, but you have to live with it. So it's not always everything.
So to jumpstart the forum boards up here, if everyone do me a favor, can you grab the pads in the middle of the table, and everyone just write down one new skill or new bit of knowledge that you want to acquire in the next couple of years. Something you see could come in either it's here, like Docker, right, or it's coming, whatever the next Docker is, Kubernetes, right? Whatever it is, but can you guys just write that down? You don't have to put your name on it. Just everyone just write that down. We want to get a little word cloud going. Just write down any skill, anything. It could be an interpersonal skill. It could be a technical skill. It could be anything. Really appreciate that. And then when you get a chance, if you could slap it up on the career development board. Is that the right spot for it, Josh?
Or the tooling, yep.
Or the tooling. Yeah, just put down the skill, because we want to get to see an idea what people are after. Any other questions? I think we're okay. It was fantastic, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Really,
Amy Lewis.
Yeah.